Hello. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Shing. Hi.
Hi.
Oh, what's this little fan behind you?
Oh, this little fan. It's a toy. It's
What
a
toy?
solar-powered toy. If there is sunlight or um, heating light on
Okay.
this solar panel, this little thing will turn.
Oh.
But at this moment inside the studio, we don't really have that kind of source of energy, so it's kind of static. But it's sweet, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it doesn't do much. It's just a little reminder that, we need to be environmentally friendly.
Yeah, sure. So today we're going to talk about something about the environment, right?
Yeah.
So,
Climate change.
yeah, so basically it's about like carbon emission. So, like, what do you do in your life to reach the carbon neutrality?
Well, I must admit I am far from reaching carbon neutrality. But there is one thing I do as a byproduct, as a side effect of the fact that it's difficult to get a car license in Beijing. So I don't drive anymore. I don't have a car, I don't drive. So I'm on foot, I'm on bicycle, or I use public transportation, or sometimes I take taxi, of course. I think it has made my life a bit more healthier and more environmentally friendly, I hope. I certainly use quite a bit of public transportation, such as the tube. Yeah.
Nice.
It's not easy for a big city like Beijing.
Yeah, and I also do something for the environment, such
do you
as whenever I wash hands or my face, I will collect the water and I use the water to flush the toilet.
Well,
Trying
that's
to
a very
save
good
some
habit.
water.
That's a very good habit. I mean, if we really think about it, there are so many things that we can do. We're definitely not doing all we can. Yeah. On that
Yeah.
part, I don't give myself very high score, I must say.
Yeah, I think living in the city, we're kind of spoiled. Cause
We're absolutely spoiled.
Yeah.
But I think there is one positive development, and something that I'm noticing, especially more recently, is that everywhere I go, I see sorted garbage facilities. You know, you have recycled, you have toxic, you have non-recyclable, and you have food residue. In our compound, for instance, only since the end of last year, I would say, they started to sort these. And interesting, people sort it themselves at home, and then they come out and throw it into different bins, and there is always someone who makes a living by sorting garbage. I think that's something very special. Their work is, of course, dealing with dirt, with garbage, but it's highly respectable, and they make a living out of that. So I really say a lot of respect for these people. If not for them, our environment would be a little bit messier, let's say.
Yeah, of course. Okay, can't wait to hear more. So good luck with your life.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And
let's do more.
Yeah, let's do
Yeah.
more.
Okay, let's
bye.
get ready for the show.
Okay,
Talk to you later.
talk to you
Watch out.
later. Okay.
Welcome to Headline Buster, brought to you by The Point with me, Lu Xin. In this series, I dissect stories that are making headlines around the world and talk to my guests to compensate for the missing pieces of the puzzle. So join me in real time by sending me your comments or questions via the CGTN page or on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, or Weibo. If you're watching this live on the CGTN application, email me at thepointwithlx@cgtn.com. Let me know what you think. We air the Headline Buster segment on Fridays at 11 a.m. Beijing time, so do get in touch, and I just might read out your comments. Today, we're going to talk about climate change, as China and the United States are stepping up cooperation. First, let's take a look at some viewers' comments on this topic. From Ivan Ho, a change in U.S. administration 2024 election may derail present climate action should the politician decide to back off from the Paris Climate Agreement again. Nevertheless, China and like-minded economies need to move forward in their respective green plan. from Edwino. I love how the Western news always have to say two things bad about China before they say one thing nice about it. When they compare pollution, they like to use absolute terms to put China on the spot. And when it comes to sustainable energy production, they like to use per capita terms to undermine China. They would do whatever for the bad China narrative. Rolling Panda. Authoritarian government causes inefficiency, claimed by a country that have government torn down whatever the previous government has done in the past term. I think we know what they're talking about. The Communist Party of China has many flaws. Efficiency is actually the top of any government in the world. There is no debate. You have 5-year plan and you just do it. Well, I have to say there are debates. They're just not out in the public. They are behind door closed door conversations, consultations, and all kind of opinions are channeled before the final consensus is made and crystallized in the 5-year plan. So there are debates, but we are very efficient. Once we decide what we're going to do, we just stick to the plan and do it. So many thanks to our viewers, as usual, for those comments. Please do keep them coming. And as always, criticism always welcome. This week, the world celebrates Earth Day on April the 22nd. So today, let's talk about climate change. What steps is China taking to protect the environment? What's the significance of China and the United States issuing a joint statement on climate change? And how is media covering the story in a neutral light, or have they framed it intentionally or not in a negative light? First, a bit of background. Now, the joint statement between China and the United States was issued after China's Special Envoy for Climate Change, Xie Zhenhua, and visiting U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, John Kerry, met in Shanghai on April the 15th and 16th. The statement confirms that the two countries' commitment to cooperating with each other and with other countries to tackle the climate crisis, and reaffirms the two governments' commitment to the Paris Agreement, which they both signed exactly 5 years ago on Earth Day in 2016. The agreement's goal is to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees, preferably to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. Now, China and the United States together account for about 40% of global emissions. By issuing the statement, the US government took another step to rejoin in the global efforts. Mind that China never exited from the Paris Agreement and relevant actions. So the United States has decided to rejoin the global efforts to implement policies, measures, and technologies to decarbonize and develop long-term strategies aimed at carbon neutrality, among other steps. Another major development is President Xi Jinping's speech at a virtual climate summit that was hosted by U.S. President Joe Biden starting on April the 22nd. Now, President Xi said it requires extraordinarily hard efforts for China to fulfill its commitment to moving from carbon peaking to carbon neutrality, which is a much shorter time span for China than what might take many developed countries. She also said China welcomes the return of the U.S. to multilateral governance on climate change and vowed to work with the international community, including the United States, in that regard. After all, it's a hopeful sign that the U.S. is engaging China on this, despite labeling China as a serious competitor on almost all other fronts. China, as one of the world's largest greenhouse gas emitters, has taken bold steps in recent years. For example, by 2019, carbon emission intensity in China had decreased by almost half compared with 2005, which exceeded the target China set for itself originally. Last year, China also promised to bring that level to more than 65% by 2030. Now, renewable energy resources have expanded rapidly. The country's installed capacity of renewable energy power generation totaled 930 million kilowatts by the end of 2020, accounting for over 40% of the country's total. That's according to the country's National Energy Administration in March. According to International Renewable Energy Agency's data, China ranks #1 in the world in renewable energy power capacity or electricity generation by 2020. And significant improvement has been made in energy efficiency. Since 2012, energy consumption per unit of GDP has been reduced by a quarter. That's equivalent to 1.3 billion tons of standard coal. And the list goes on. Of course, China still has a long way to go. According to World Nuclear News, the International Energy Agency warned that demand for all fossil fuels is on course to grow significantly in 2021. More than 80% of that is set to come from Asia, led by China, much more than from developed economies. That, I believe, is also a result of China's robust economic recovery from the COVID-19 crisis, plus the size of its economy. On top of that, geopolitics still gets in the way in terms of discussion on the environment. While it is still trying to project itself as the global leader in tackling climate change, the United States has adopted a very different attitude regarding Japan's decision to release radioactive wastewater into the Pacific Ocean. Despite strong objection from its neighbors and from Japan's neighbors and the UN human rights experts expressing deep disappointment and warning against considerable risks, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken thanked Japan for its apparent efforts in a recent tweet. So, fight climate change, but forget about the Pacific? What exactly is the U.S.'s message for the world? Now, back to my usual focus. How have the media covered the climate change story? Let's take a look at some recent examples from this past week at least. Now, our first example comes from the Wall Street Journal with the title, John Kerry says the U.S. will hold China accountable on climate pledges. It starts by saying U.S. climate envoy John Kerry said the Biden administration won't compromise with China on economic issues or human rights in its attempts to negotiate a deal to address climate change. Right off the bat, the story interprets the statement between the U.S. and China not as anything joint or mutual, but rather a pledge by China to do what the U.S. demands, as if China owes the U.S. But if you read further, the U.S. climate envoy actually says the climate issue is a freestanding issue. It's not for trade against the other critical differences that we have with China right now, and those have got to be channeled separately. Climate is about the survival of the planet. Channeled separately, Kerry's message is very clear. Now, climate change is climate change. Don't package it with human rights or trade or any other issue. So I wonder whether the Wall Street Journal really understood Kerry correctly, or they choose to believe there are different messages in between his lines. It doesn't read that way to me. The New York Times quoted him too on U.S.-China tensions. It quotes Kerry saying during an interview in Seoul that it's very important for us to try to keep those other things away because climate is a life or death issue in so many different parts of the world, and that this is not a finger-pointing exercise of one nation alone. I think his messages are more than clear. Our next example comes from the BBC with the headline, China and the U.S. pledge climate change commitment. It's a neutral enough headline, and the article itself does lay out some facts, but the head image is, guess what? A policeman wearing a mask against the smoggy backdrop of the Tiananmen. Beijing doesn't have blue skies or clean air every day, but is such a politically charged photo totally appropriate and absolutely necessary for a story that's supposedly non-political. The whole point of U.S.-China engagement on climate change is to screen out the political noises. The article contained certain fairness, however. It does point out both China's and the U.S.'s shortcomings. For example, that according to the Climate Action Tracker, an independent scientific analysis that tracks government climate action, China's nationally determined contributions, meaning the goal China sets for itself, is highly insufficient and are not at all consistent with holding warming to below 2 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, for the U.S., the tracker gives the worst rating of critically insufficient. It also reminds readers that the U.S. was absent from climate negotiations during President Donald Trump's term of office. The article quotes a Greenpeace interviewee who described the joint statement between China and the United States as positive, which is positive, but China's efforts and ambitious targets are nowhere to be seen. If I had not laid out the background for you now, would you have walked away with the impression that China has at least been doing some things? I doubt it. Finally, a video on YouTube called How the US Fell Behind China in the Fight Against Climate Change, posted by CNBC at the end of last year. It gives a rather comprehensive picture of China's climate efforts. At the start of the video, it outlines the problem that China is facing, although I would remind people China's air is not always so smoggy and not everywhere so smoggy. Take a look.
It's not that people didn't know that pollution in China was a problem. Since around 2006, China has been the global leader in annual carbon emissions, surpassing the US. But seeing the images alongside the data drove it home. The country was in bad shape.
The video then goes on to present the work that China has done in the past years.
So we've seen the last decade an incredible rate of growth in China of clean tech, pushed in no small measure by air quality concerns, but equally pushed by the idea of China being a global marketer for clean alternatives.
The country has become the world's largest manufacturer of solar panels, lithium-ion batteries, and electric vehicles. China buys over half of the world's new electric cars and nearly all of the world's electric buses. So when Trump withdrew the US from the Paris Agreement, China became the signatory with the most economic clout and a de facto climate leader.
On the other side, the video also quotes an expert who explains the challenges to shift China's energy focus away from coal.
Half of China's coal is burned in heavy industry directly. China's factories produce half of the world's steel and cement. And unfortunately, right now, we don't have readily available alternatives that are cost effective. So that's going to require China to expend massive investments and efforts in order to develop cleaner alternatives for industries such as green hydrogen.
Well, people love the Tiananmen Square, don't they? Anyway, having critiqued these stories, I want to say it's not about international public opinion or geopolitics that China is fighting climate change. Nobody wants better clean and better, clean air, blue sky more than the Chinese people ourselves. After all, it's about the happiness of every one of us living here. We'll take a quick break and we'll be back right after that, and I'll be talking to 3 experts about this topic. Stay with me.
April 22nd, 1970, the birth of a modern environmental movement. What was the very first Earth Day catalyzed an annual call to action. So, how far have we come along since? Here's the gist. It began with one man, US Senator Gaylord Nelson, who wanted to draw attention to the detrimental impact of air and water pollution.
I don't think there's any other issue viewed in its broadest sense, which is as critical to mankind as the issue of the quality of the environment in which we live.
The planet was sustaining a different crowd back then. We start with the obvious, population. In 1970, there were just over 3.6 billion people on Earth. That figure more than doubled in 2020 to 7.8 billion. The effect on greenhouse gases cannot be stressed enough. Global carbon emissions are up nearly 2.5 times, from 14.8 billion metric tons to 36.4 billion metric tons. Perhaps most noticeable, it's getting warmer. Across land and sea, surface temperatures are up nearly 1 degree Celsius since 1970. Just look around. Prolonged droughts, wildfires, melting glaciers, rising sea levels, and a loss of animal habitat. Yet it's not all doom and gloom. We are getting better at lightening our carbon footprint. Renewable energy, such as hydro, wind, and solar, is on the rise and growing each year. We've also become better at conservation, expanding forest cover, creating wildlife and marine parks, reducing the use of plastics. The world has changed considerably since that first Earth Day 51 years ago, but so have we, and our understanding of what needs to be done to protect our home. And now, you have the gist.
Welcome back to Headline Buster brought to you by The Point with me, Li Xin, and I would like to introduce the three of my guests for the half of discussion that we're going to have. They are Wu Changhua, Executive Director of Professional Association for China's Environment, Thomas Gale, President of Childwise International Corporation, and Rick Garson, CEO and founder of VX Entertainment. Welcome to all three of you to Headline Buster. Now, Ms. Wu, let me go to you. As we are just hours away after President Xi delivered a speech during the Leaders Summit on Climate, where he not only talked about lofty goals, but also briefed the world on what China has committed itself to do. And he was talking about extraordinarily hard efforts that China has committed itself to take, from its carbon peaking to carbon neutrality, basically in 30 years' time. And for Western developed economies, that's almost half a century. So help us understand exactly what this extraordinarily hard efforts mean by President Xi.
As the president pointed out, and China has made a serious commitment to reaching capping or peaking of its emission before 2030. And then carbon neutrality before 2060. So we literally have this 3 decades apart when China has to, peak its emission first, and then quickly decline its emissions actually almost to zero, to carbon neutral actually by 2060. As you mentioned, actually compare, from time schedule perspective actually. So we have, barely just half of the time most of the industrialized countries have experienced, between peaking and emissions there and net zero there. China remains the world's largest developing country with 1.4 billion people, right? And if you look at President Biden's plan, this is about the jobs, about future infrastructure, about future, industrialization. It's a similar thing for China as well. So it's not China going to somehow magically peak its emissions and then whatever, right, and just get down to zero. Rather, this is a fundamental transformation of how the future energy structure will be, and the future infrastructure will be actually to accommodate this clean energy revolution there.
Yeah,
and one major issue is
President
coal.
Xi, President Xi also talked about. President Xi talked about some of the actions that China is taking, and he made this reference. He said that China will strictly control coal-fired power generation projects and strictly limit the increase in coal consumption over the 14th five-year plan period and phase it down in the 15th five-year plan period. How significant is that? First of all, to strictly control the increase and then to phase it down. I mean, in the course of 10 years' time, how is China able to boldly or ambitiously make that target, knowing that it's most likely going to meet it, judging from the track record it has?
Well, as we all know, coal accounts for a little more than half of China's energy structure today. Even though we experienced actually the decline in the last decade or so, about 20 percentage point more. So in order to get from more than 50% actually further down to not only half, but also peak half, and then actually to zero, that's going to be a very difficult journey. It's about the cost. It's about fundamental transformation of the infrastructure, the energy infrastructure, and the country, the people has to bear the cost, right? And we cannot really rely on others. Of course, we could say we could invest in renewable energy. Yes, it's investment, right? We need money, and there are many priorities the country, the government has to manage for the benefit of its people. But somehow the energy transformation is pretty much taking much of the country's resources in order to deliver this transformation. So the burden and the task actually itself is very hard. Yeah. And I'm not sure the international community really gets it at this point. This point.
Okay, let me go to Gale. Mr. Gale, do you think that the international community is getting the point of how much of an effort China is challenging itself to, and China is committing itself to? Or do you think it is, just another country fighting climate change?
I think that the world really doesn't understand how much China has done already. I mean, I applaud President Xi's efforts over the last 10 years to substantially reduce the environmental impact in the country, and the huge effort going forward. I mean, we talked about this on the show before, that the nuclear energy will be the major producer of electricity in the future. So China is making huge commitments in that area for safe nuclear power. They do, unfortunately, because of the energy consumption demands, they're going to add as much coal generation as the United States has in the next 8 years, but then phase that out over the next 30 years. So it's a balancing act on meeting the present needs and then building towards the future. But I think that, again, in the last 3 5-year plans, that China has put energy and environmental reduction as one of the key 5 points in the plan. So I think they don't get enough credit, and I think they're doing some amazing things. And I'm glad the United States is back on track to hold up their end. So I think with the summit we just had, it was 60% of the greenhouse gas emitters were participating, in that conference, and have made the commitment to try to be carbon neutral by 2050, 2060. So we're on the right track to actually do things and have more action than just rhetoric.
Okay. Rick, what is your assessment of the kind of momentum that seems to be gathering pretty fast, since recently, and especially since the United States has made a high-profile return to the Paris Climate Agreement?
No, thanks for having me. And I think it's absolutely great. I mean, look, the bottom line is that China can't do it without the States, and the States can't do it without China. And it's been, for me, being here, it's been an unbelievable turnaround with how they controlled the air pollution, and everybody should learn from here. But just also with the new administration is a new outlook, and everybody's got to work together to make it happen. And just for example, for the upcoming Olympics, 2022, is that China and the IOC are the first country in the world, the first Olympics to build this CO2 all natural refrigeration skating rink, and the only new venue built for the Olympics. So there's zero GWP output. So it's the extremely environmental friendly rink, and the first to do this. So they're making real efforts, and it's getting better daily.
Rick, I understand. Rick, I understand you're based in China. You're speaking us from within China, and you have first-hand experience. Help us understand exactly what has been your experience over the past few years, witnessing the changes that have been, realized in terms of the cleanness of the air, the blueness of the sky, and the kind of awareness that people start to accumulate towards the environment. What has been your experience, personal experience?
My experience has been, when I first came here, it was kind of during the winter days, and it was really scary. You couldn't, it was
when really, was that?
A lot of, what?
When was that? About?
I say I first came here, my first trip was for the 2008 Summer Olympics, but then, and then I moved here 4 years ago. But the thing is, prior to that, there were really bad days. But then again, I remember in California, standing on the beach in Santa Monica and looking east, the air was all yellow and you couldn't see the mountains. Here, I think pollution's dropped by 30-40%. And now, at night you can see the stars here in Beijing. You can see the mountains. It's been a drastic change for the better. And it's been unbelievable to see that how China has said they're going to do it, and they do it. As I love America, America's a great country, but they can't make up their minds, as you know. So, but it's great. It's really been amazing to see the change. And then taking the lead, and also like for these Olympics, where all the world will be watching again China, and by building this new ice skating rink, the Ribbon, the speed skating rink, with my business associate Guy Cotier, it's the first natural refrigeration skating rink, in China.
Yeah. So, Changhua, let me go to you. What happened exactly over the past few years that things really took a market turn for the better? And how solid is the gain that we're seeing? How solid is the changes that we're seeing? I mean, since the beginning of this year, for instance, the air in Beijing has been less than satisfactory, I would say.
I think that the biggest step the country has ever taken to, we call it a war on air pollution, right? And that was declared back in 2013. So it literally takes a united front of the whole country addressing these issues there, starting with the coal, right? Fossil fuel burning. And because you talk about air pollution, as long as we know where the sources of the pollution are, then we can figure out how to address them. Which is a good thing. That's why we know where the pollutants come from. Coal-fired power plants, transportation, construction site, whatever. So literally the government pull the country, everyone together to address those issues. Then you started to see new laws coming together, amendment to the laws that really started to have laws with the teeth, meaning clear liabilities and the penalties, and of course incentives there as well. And the monitoring definitely coming on board. The other thing actually, with the digital technology, AI technology coming on board, so literally as an ordinary citizen, just using your mobile phone, smartphone, you take a photo, the AI application basically can tell you immediately the PM 2.5, the concentration of that particular moment actually. So with all the things happening now, so everyone suddenly, it's not just the government, right? The government, the business, but also individuals, the general public started really participating into this process because everybody cares about air quality, about their health, right? So I think that's the sort of the nature of the issue, why we've witnessed that the progress is made so far. As I said, it's really a united front in the country to fight air pollution.
Thomas, how big of a deal is it that President Xi accepted the invitation to participate in the Leaders Summit on Climate hosted by President Biden and made a speech there? Do you think the two countries can really isolate this case, this engagement from the plethora of other issues they might have? Let's not forget the U.S. Congress just passed some kind of an act, trying to contain China from a comprehensive perspective. But on climate, it seems that they are determined to channel it separately, in the words of Kerry.
Yeah, I think it's a great step forward for both countries. I think for President Biden to host it, and then for the for China to accept so readily. President Xi was very quick in doing the acceptance, did a beautiful speech to the leadership. So I think that shows the willingness of both countries to be able to work very effectively together. And I think that is, as Rick said before, that's what it's about. It's about working together to solve a problem that affects everybody. Pollution respects no borders. So water pollution, air pollution, climate change affects everyone, all of humanity, anywhere in the globe. So we have to work together to be able to do these things and make that happen. So, and I think President Xi has a very serious commitment to it. President Biden does, appointing Kerry in a new special role, just focusing on it. Again, I was embarrassed by our past presidents' lack of efforts on it. I'm very proud of our president's efforts, and I believe things will happen.
Let's hope it holds. Finally, before we go, we have a viewer comment to share with all of us. Let's take a look at that, and it comes in the form of a comment. Today, these Western countries moves their manufacturing industries to smaller and developing nations and are now accusing them of polluting and contributing to global warming. I want to give from Gualza Suter. I want to give the opportunity to Rick probably to say something about this. Yeah, Rick, do you have a comment on this?
Well, yeah, there's truth, but I mean, like just being really simple about it is like everybody's, you got to recognize it, and we got to fix it, and it takes everybody to do it together, and with the new administration and President Xi, they will work together, and I jokingly say, China's like really showing by example, and I'm saying that that it's red China is going to green China, because they're really showing by example how to do it. And America's got to wake up and catch up.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. It's funny. Yeah, green China, we all like that. But China will be red in the heart.
Forever. That's right. Red is forever.
Yeah. All right. We'll leave it there. Many thanks to my guests, Wu Changhua, Thomas Gale, and Rick Garson. That's been a very interesting discussion. And
thank you so much.
Many thanks to our viewers for having followed our discussion. I hope you learned something or enjoyed the conversation as well as usual. You can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle Luxin in Beijing. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next Friday as on our Headline Buster segment. You've got the point. Bye for now.
I think we're clear.
Are we clear?
Was it okay?
I have some comments from Facebook and YouTube.
Okay.
Yes.
Every country did its best from viewpoint of the citizens and netizens, but here we are. It's sad. From Top Fan. From R. Nay. I think it is a very interesting comment. I think we like to think that we already do a lot. We already did a lot, but here we are. So it means that we probably didn't do enough, and we were not aware of how severe the problem is. As I said at the beginning of the discussion, we actually can do more, and sometimes, for the sake of convenience or for the sake of, laziness, we don't do everything that we can do. I have to do a bit more. To be a good mother, I have to actually, my daughter once suggested, should we go absolutely green, make our own bread, reduce as much trash as possible. I said it's a good idea, but we never had the motivation to really do that because we feel it might be really complicated and it might really take a lot of time. So between not doing enough to being intimidated by too ambitious a goal, we have to find a way to start somewhere. But very good comment. Yeah. So any other comment? Let me see. From Jessica Liu, the US and some Western media are always skeptical, biased, and like to spin negative propaganda on anything China say or do, though in their heart they know China is serious and have no problem delivering what they have committed. What can I say? I think we have to just ignore all kinds of noises and keep doing what is necessary, what is right. This climate thing is definitely what China needs to do for its own good. So forget about what others say about us, just keep on doing what is right. From other people, from Gulam Mortaza, good luck back. From Omar Tim, hello back. Yeah, I see R. Koine has quite some comments.
I remember there's one said, no man is an island, and we need more transparency as one world.
True. I think that's a fair comment. We do need more transparency, and we need more trust as well. Because I think right now there's so much of a trust deficit. When you have trust deficit, I always say no amount of transparency would be enough, because You know, how
Right.
much are you going to show to the world what you do, what you say, and the world will still say, well, what else? You know, there must be
Right.
something you're hiding. So with no trust, it doesn't work. And I think trust really starts from sometimes you have to have a minimum level of trust in your co-inhabitant of the world. You know, this is you just have to do that because we are here together. Yeah.
Still a long way to go.
Still a long way to go, but for some people who say distrust and verify, that is very sinister. Okay, what else?
Any comments from YouTube?
Adnan Gil, good. Good. Yeah. Patrick Coetti, very good. Very good. Okay. From Jimmy Flamenco, watching from Philippines. Hi to my friends from the Philippines. Yeah, well, we have new comments. Thank you for the people who have. Yeah. All right, a lot of hearts. my heart back.
Bring hearts.
Yeah. Well, here somebody has absolutely no trust. By Kevin Lodge, he says nobody believes anything promulgated by China. I have to say, you know, if you believe that is the case, then you will be in a very sorrowful state because China is doing a lot of things. Chinese people are doing a lot of things. You can disbelieve to a certain degree, but if you doubt everything that China says or does, what am I going to say? I will only say I'm very sorry for you. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not apologizing, but yeah, trust, minimum level of trust is what we all need to have. All right, it's a big
right.
topic. Next week, maybe I'll have something smaller. All right, have a good weekend. Yeah?
Thank you. Happy
It's always-
Friday.
Thank you. Happy weekend.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.